Welcome to Starbound. My name is Veronica and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get started into today's story, please check below to see if you're subscribed to our channel. It's 100% free and just allows our stories to pop up on your feed more often. Overhead fans rattled above the mess hall like a firing line that never learned to stop. Captain Orrin Cade sat beneath them, boot propped on the edge of a dented table, pretending his spoonful of vitamin porridge tasted like anything but chalk. The night cycle lights were dialed low, painting the room in nicotine yellow. Most inmates were already locked in their cells, but a handful of smugglers lingered, trading rumors and contraband across the sticky floor. Cade slid a grease-smudged ration chit toward Dima the Bulk, a slab-shouldered smuggler with implanted knuckle studs. 2 protein bars, Cade said, keeping his voice lazy. And the newer ones, last shift. I can tell the difference. Dima grunted. That arm of yours still got game, Captain? Word is, you're running low on favors. Word stale, Cade replied, flexing his titanium carbon prosthetic just enough for the servos to whir. I've got plenty left. Metal scraped. 3 members of the Iron Dogs gang shouldered into the aisle, prison grays open at the neck to flash bone tattoos. Their ringleader, Maddox, slapped Dima's bowl from his hands. Protein bars are ours tonight, Maddox announced, eyes glittering like broken glass. Tray just closed. Kay didn't stand. He only set his spoon down and let a small smile breathe across his mouth. Funny, I didn't hear the bid. Maddox stepped closer, one palm resting on a ceramic shiv tucked under his belt. Dima backed away. Nobody chose a side when 2 wolves started circling. You gonna context? Maddox said. Better make it worth my time. Cade's smile thinned. My time's already valuable. The overhead lights snapped to black. Total darkness swallowed the room, followed by a heartbeat later by the wail of a klaxon, 3 rising notes chopped off, then 3 again. Emergency lighting punched in, red strobes that made everyone look skinned. Cade felt the floor tremble, a distant impact rolling through the iron halo's hull. Conversations died. Maddox's hand twitched towards the shiv, then froze. Cade rose now. Shifts canceled, he said, voice just loud enough. You feel that? External breach. The klaxon bared again. Screens at the serving line flickered. Text scrolling. Security lockdown. Remain in cells. Dima bolted for the corridor. Maddox weighed the room. Half-drawn blade reflecting crimson pulses, then sheathed it with a curse and followed his gang. Cade alone remained, eyes narrowed at the ceiling vents. He recognized that tremor, control docking, not a random meteor strike. Someone had latched on. Someone who didn't want witnesses. He snagged the abandoned protein bars, pocketed them, and started for the maintenance ladder. Frost blossomed across Varric Tal's faceplate as the airlock equalized. The temperature on the human rock felt lukewarm to him, but ritual demanded a clean entry. Tal flexed his spine, letting the subtle click of plated forearms echo through the narrow tunnel. 8 operatives formed a precise V behind him, weapons shouldered. The insertion craft's hull still vibrated with residual thruster heat, but Iron Halo's sensors slept under the electromagnetic sheath they'd woven during approach. No alarms, aside from the standard lockdown they triggered intentionally, should betray them yet. A green glyph pulsed on Tal's wrist console, atmospheric match. He cycled the hatch manually. The door groaned like a wounded thing. Iron flakes drifted off, shimmering in the craft's interior light, before the vacuum pumps caught them. Life support? He asked, and clipped trade cant. Operative Nur tapped a portable node against the open conduit. Dampening underway. Heat signatures across inhabited sectors will drop below Terran scanners in 2 minutes. Acceptable. Tal stepped into the prison's docking spine. Condensation hissed off the rubberized deck, evaporating in the still air. He inhaled chemical tang, recycled sweat, and something else. The stale scent of institutional despair. No wonder the human trader chose to rot here. The place reeked of forgotten souls. Target beacon? Tal asked. Dormant. Near replied. He hasn't used his implant in 11 standard months. He will soon. Tal allowed himself a whisper of satisfaction. Cornered prey thrashes. A proximity chime sounded. Unexpected interference. The sheath had warped local electronics, forcing them onto manual protocols. Tal signaled halt, knelt, and examined the half-melted conduit leading into the superstructure. Human-made, sloppy, coordinated, but still obstructing their path. Override it, he ordered. Operative spread out, tool head sparking. Tal's breath fogged the inside of his visor as he adjusted the life support taps further down. Dimming oxygen levels across the station would mask their thermal presence and panic the prisoners into predictable patterns. When the last sparking bolt fell away, Tal stepped forward, pulse steady. Clan honor awaited closure on the other side of this labyrinth. Cade swung himself into the crawl space above cell block 5, boots kicking free from gravity as the spinning ring's rotation canceled out in the narrow shaft. 0G flooded his body. Sweat lifted from his neck and drifted like tiny luminous globes in the red light. The shaft smelled of old lubricant and hot wiring. He thumbed the magnetic clasps on his prosthetic fingers, gripping the conduit line overhead, and pulled himself along. Below, through the grated floor, he glimpsed shapes moving, dark, lean forms in composite armor. They strode past stunned guards with the calm of surgeons, weapons lighting their path in surgical arcs. He counted 8. 2 swept their rifles across cowering inmates, then opened fire. Pulse bolts tore the corridor doors apart, but Cade saw no bodies fall. Non-lethal, he realized. Stunners to drive prisoners back. The aliens weren't here for a massacre. They were here for him. A familiar chill crawled his spine, the echo of another mission, another night where screams ricocheted down steel corridors. Cinder 4 all over again. Except this time, he was a designated corpse. Cade reached the junction hatch, a manual wheel stiff with age. He cranked to half a rotation, muscles straining as a shaft shook under some distant detonation. The wheel gave, hatch iris opened, and he floated into the vertical drop. 14 feet down, no time to climb. He kicked off, hitting the ladder halfway with a clang that rang through his bones. He caught himself, boots slipping, then slid the rest of the way, landing hard on the dim corridor outside the tool workshop. Emergency strobes flickered here too, but another light pulsed at the far end, ghostly blue, rhythmic. Fire suppression foam leaking from the ceiling. Kay ducked beneath it, boots splashing, and keyed the workshop lock with a stolen override chip. The door sighed open. Heat slapped him first, thick and oily. Someone had left a synth protein pack on the hot plate, forgotten in the panic, and it had ruptured into black tar that smeared the air with burnt soy stink. Rows of power tools hung from magnetic strips. Welding rigs, oxyacetylene torches, stacked spools of cutting wire. Cade sealed the door, jammed the manual bolt, and hustled to his stashed lockbox beneath a drill press. Combination punched in, 4595, the casualty count from Cinder 4. Inside, a compact rail pistol, 2 mags, and the poker chip-sized data core he'd risked everything to protect. He checked its diagnostic. Status, green.
Pulse solid. Reloaded weapon, clipped it to his belt. Then he grabbed the oxyacet torch, fuel tank slung over his back, and mapped out angles. Door 15 feet. Overhead vent 8. If he cut the vent grill, threading the cutting wire through... The corridor outside thudded. Heavy boots, talons scraping. 2 shadows paused outside the workshop. Cade worked faster, heart hammering. He looped wire, tied it to the tank's pressure valve, ran it through the vent he'd sliced open, then heaved the tank onto the upper shelf. Door bolts pinged, something hot melting through the metal. The aliens were breaching. Cade ducked behind the milling rig, thumb hovering over the torch's igniter wire he'd splice into a handheld trigger. The door caved inward, glowing at the seams. A Velathi scout kicked it free and stepped inside. Armor resembled sculpted obsidian, segmented to mimic feathers. Its visor scanned left, right. A second scout followed, talons clacking. They cleared the doorway, the first aimed down the center aisle. Cade squeezed the trigger. A shriek of pressure. The wire yanked the valve. Oxyacid gas whooshed into the enclosed space, igniting against the torch's pilot's spark. The explosion didn't roar. It cracked. A convulsive slap that punched Cade backward and tore both aliens off their feet. One slammed against the ceiling, armor ablaze, then crashed into the scrap bin, twitching. The second rolled, smoked, but came up on one knee, rifle rising. Cade's rail pistol barked twice. The first slug cratered the scout's shoulder plate. The second punched through the visor. Blue fluid splattered the wall, sizzling on contact with the air. Silence, except for tiny alarms shrieking from overhead sensors and the drip of molten plastic. Cade checked himself. Minor burns along his left sleeve, ringing ears, but whole, until he looked at the floor. His data core lay amid shards of melting casing, its seal cracked. A single green pulse flickered, then stuttered amber. Cade knelt, jaw rigid. One more hit like that, and the proof died forever. He pocketed the device gently, then scavenged a fresh battery from a fallen welding gun and jammed it into his rail pistol. No time to mourn. The breaching charge's thunder would echo down these corridors. The other 6 operatives were already triangulating. Cade limped to the ruined doorway, stepping over the smoldering corpse. Red strobes painted him a blood-soaked shade as he muttered to ghosts only he could hear, "Not tonight." He turned toward the coolant trenches and moved at a run. Ash-gray sky panels flickered overhead, a strobe of faulty daylight that turned the prison yard into a nightmare carnival. Automated guard towers cracked off warning shots, their ruby tracers stitching the cracked concrete. Clouds of stunned gas drifted near the north wall, pale, green, thick as a sea fog, herding panicked inmates across the open ground. Cade vaulted a toppled meal cart and pressed against a support column slick with condensation. Beneath the trumpet of alarms, he heard something worse. The whine of security drones switching to live fire mode. Metal wings sliced the air, rotors buzzing like hornets that smelled blood. He needed allies, warm bodies who could shoot straight, or at least block a bolt meant for him. The yard offered slim pickings, gang enforcers brawling over shock batons, political prisoners shielding one another with cafeteria trays, a stump-legged pirate dragging himself toward the infirmary hatch. A muffled cry cut through the bedlam. Cade scanned left. A girder had fallen from the upper catwalk, flattening a line of benches and pinned a maintenance kiosk. Under the twisted beams, a woman squirmed, short auburn hair matted to her forehead, one arm trapped beneath a spar that hissed with escaping steam. She beat the beam with her free hand, knuckles already raw. Cade sprinted. A drone dipped toward him. He fired 3 rounds without slowing. One slug punched through the glass optics, and the machine spiraled into a food stall, spraying boiling lubricant. He skidded beside the trapped woman. Name? Dara Quinn, she rasped, eyes watering from leaking coolant. Systems engineer. Used to be. Unless you feel like digging graves. Cade wedged his prosthetic shoulder under the girder. Heat soaked through the alloy, biting skin where metal met flesh. Brace yourself, he heaved. Muscles in his good leg screamed. The beam lifted a hand width. Dara jerked her pinned arm free. Blood sheeted down her fingers. She didn't scream, just sucked air through her teeth and nodded ready. Cade let the beam crash, shaking the deck. A fresh plume of dust billowed. Can you run? He asked. Define run. She flexed her arm, winced. I can limp with style. Good enough. He passed one of the protein bars. Sugar spike. We're going shopping for guns. Across the yard, inmates scattered as another drone raked the ground. A concussion round slammed into the earth, hurling bodies like rag dolls. Smoke rolled outward, thick and acrid. Cade guided Dara into the swirl, counting on the cover. Shots cracked behind them, followed by a chorus of metallic shrieks, talon boots on steel catwalk. The Valethi were in the yard now, herding prisoners toward choke points. Cade put his lips near Dara's ear. See the laundry bay doors? She nodded, eyes watering. That's where the black market boys hole up. We reach it, door slam, we negotiate. They sprinted into the smoke. Steam hung waist deep, tinted crimson by the emergency beacons hidden behind ceiling grates. Washers the size of escape pods clanged in offbeat rhythm, their drums half filled with riot uniforms and contraband blankets. The place smelled of rust, wet cloth, and the sharp ammonia sting of cheap disinfectant. Fletch Rui, lounged atop a folding table, boots crossed, dice clattering in one hand. He watched Cade approach the way a bored shark watches a wounded seal, interested, but not rushing dinner. Well, Captain, Fletch drawled, his voice velvet over broken glass. You bring laundry or trouble? Cade looked at the 6 armed inmates ringed around the makeshift bazaar. Home-rigged tasers, pipe shotguns, a carbon fiber crossbow that had probably started life as a bed frame brace. Dangerous only at close range, but that was close enough. Bit of both. Cade offered Dora a box cutter. She sliced open an access panel, yanked out a coil of optic cables. Need bodies en route to the launch decks. Fletch tossed the dice, snake eyes. He smirked at the omen. Bodies cost. Roots cost more. Cade reached into his pocket and produced a short roll of encrypted comm codes printed on heat plastic. Half now, half once the bay doors open. Fletch caught the roll, flicked through the symbols. Naval burst frequencies. Worth a shuttle seat, maybe 2. His gaze flicked to Dara, lingering. She yours? She's the engineer who'll keep your heart beating when that stun gas hits your lungs. Seat's hers. Cade leaned in, voice dropping. Bring 10 fighters with actual discipline, and I won't feed you to the birds. The smirk faded. Fletch jerked his chin at one of his lieutenants. Gear up. Then to Cade. Spin rim trams locked down. We take the crawl ducts, surface on D-block mezzanine, then elevator shafts to launch. Word is the alien boy severed the main power trunk, so expect a climb. Any other news? Cade asked. Fletch's eyes glimmered. Yeah, Warden and Mako sitting in the security hub, sweating bullets. The man's in deep with the contraband trade. He'll fold if we push. Cade nodded. Let's fold him later. He slid a battered stun baton across the table. Gas flooding corridors in 3 minutes. Move. Steam swallowed the group as they trotted for the rear service hatch, Fletch flipping the dice once more before stuffing them into his pocket. The security hub resembled an autopsy theater, tiers of terminals sloping toward a central holotank that flickered with prison schematics. Human corpses lay draped over consoles, their uniforms scorched by pulse bolts. Varric Tall wiped congealing blue fluid from his gauntlet, then tapped the holotank. It cycled through camera feeds, prisoners clustering in laundry, drones losing ground in yard, and his fallen scouts in the workshop, bodies charred beyond recognition. Dishonor tasted like bile at the back of his throat. "Trace the target," Tal ordered. "Biometric residue on Deck B." Operative Nur patched a lead into the prison's sensor spine. Half the node sparked and died. Sabotage. Tal studied the flicker of static, counting the missing segments like pulled feathers. "He crippled what he doesn't control," Tal murmured. "Predictable arrogance." Nur keyed a sequence. Vents above the map glowed. "Stun gas ready, Commander." "Release across inhabited sectors. Focus on Deck B and C." Tal straightened, wings flexing inside his armor shell. "When the humans choke, Cade will see clean air. Herd him to launch where escape seems possible. That's where we clip him." Operatives acknowledged. Gas icons bloomed across the hologram, a green tide rolling through corridors. Tal watched doors thumb shut, locking inmates with their choices. Outside the viewport strip, iron halo slow rotation revealed the spread of stars, pinpricks against canvas. So quiet, so empty. Easier to hide shame out there. Cold gnawed at Cade's ankles, ankle-deep water milky with leaked thermal fluid. Condensation fogged the corridor, swallowing the strobing lights and muffling distant screams. Frost crystals formed along the seams of Cade's prosthetic knee, squealing each time the joint flexed. Dara crouched at a wall panel, multi-tool sparking. "Trip charges," she muttered. 3-inch spread, pressure plates under the surface. She wiped smeared blood from her brow. "They tie detonators into coolant lines to scatter shrapnel. Can you snip them?" Her reply was a brittle laugh. "Can I breathe?" She teased a copper filament free, twisted it with a thumbnail, then winked. The nearest plate indicator faded from orange to dull gray. "Give me 40 seconds. Cade watched the fog thicken, noxious clouds of stun gas eating the warm air behind them. Prisoners not fast enough curled on the deck. Some twitched, others simply sagged into oblivion. The gas crept forward like a living thing. "We're out of time." Cade offered her his half-mask respirator. "Take it." "Not a chance," Dara said, severing the last wire. "I need both hands steady. You'll lead the climb." He almost argued. Instead, he keyed the respirator to half-flow, bit down on the mouthpiece, and signaled go. They crossed the plates, one soft step at a time, while coolant dripped rhythmic as a metronome. Halfway through, the pressure in his prosthetic calf spiked. A maintenance patch had split, coolant seepage eating at the biointerface. Pain flared, sharp and electric. Cade gritted teeth, shouldered on. They cleared the last plate. Dara sealed the detonator grid, then sagged against the wall, coughing wetly. He traded her the mask. She took 2 pulls of filtered air, chest rattling. "We're almost at the chapel," he said, voice low. "Gather there, sort factions, plan." She wiped her mouth. "Why you? Of all people, why does an entire alien strike team need your head?" Cade hesitated. The walls moaned as life support fans throttled back, dragging the gas forward. He rolled up his left sleeve, revealing the compartment along his prosthetic's forearm. The cracked data core rested inside, a single amber pulse blinking. "This holds proof of a massacre on Cinder 4, he said. "Velethi bioweapon, thousands dead. Command buried it, threw me here to shut me up. Their honor demands no one ever knows." "You're risking your life for ghosts." Dara touched the casing, eyes fierce. "I can fix the fracture, maybe salvage integrity." "Can you?" Hope felt foreign on his tongue. "Need a stable power feed in 60 minutes. She met his gaze. "Give me that. I give you a beacon that sings across half the sector too. Then we move," Cade said. He helped her up, the cold water sloshing as they limped toward the exit ladder. Candles long since confiscated had left soot ghosts on the vaulted ceilings. Plastic pews lay overturned, and a broken hollow pulpit flickered static. Fletch's recruits huddled in scattered groups, eyes wide, guns clutched tight. The chapel smelled of spent ozone and burnt fabric. Fledgling battlefield stench. Cade paced before them, coat plastered wet against his shoulders. Launch deck is 5 vertical shafts up. Velocity control main corridors. We climb elevator ribs. Breach bay doors. Hijack a shuttle. Non-negotiable. Murmurs rippled. One inmate, skinny, neck ringed with barcode tattoos, raised a jury-rigged flagship pistol. "Why not storm security hub? We own this rock. We seize it." Fletch lounged near a shattered stained glass panel, rain of broken color at his feet. "That gets us dead, Scar. The birds own the voltage. They shut off your air, you suffocate stylishly." Scar spat. "Better than bending a knee to another tyrant." Cade stepped close, meeting Scar's gaze. "You want a tyrant clipped? Good. Help me expose war crimes that make Imako's graft look like a parking ticket. You'll be heroes instead of meat shields." Scar hesitated, pistol lowering a hair, but a half-dozen inmates drifted toward him, eyes hard. A fracture was forming. Dara eased beside Cade. "We're losing them." Cade raised his voice. "I've got a data core. Proof. Broadcast it. And a Terran task force rides and shooting. Everyone on this deck walks free under amnesty statutes for whistleblower support." Scar laughed, bitter as battery acid. "Amnesty? From the same brass that runs this hole? You're dreaming." Cade opened his prosthetic compartment, let the amber pulse glow across the room. "Dreams over. This is the leverage. You walk now, the birds hunt you later. You stay, we fight on our own terms." Silence reigned, thick enough to choke. Finally, Scar holstered his pistol, shrugged. "If I die, I hunt you." "Get in line," Cade muttered. Decision made, the groups merged, nervous, imperfect, but unified for the moment. Dara tugged at his sleeve, whispering, "Power feeds in the drone control pit 1 deck up. If we take it, I can fix the core." "Then that's our next target." Kay turned to the war-torn congregation, voice steady. "Pack ammo. We move in 5. Outside, thumps echoed, heavy boots on steel. The Valethi were circling the chapel, tightening the net. Cade's hands clenched around his rail pistol, nerves thrumming like taut wire. The drone control pit looked as if a comet had kissed it and moved on. Hollow screens hung in shredded curls from the ceiling, their shattered panels flashing random signal codes. A single tactical display remained intact, its surface poked by fresh bullet divots and edged in soot. Cade ducked behind the console bank, sliding on knees, still slick from coolant. Dara crouched beside him, fingers already flying across an exposed circuit lattice. Fletch's fighters spread out, Scar on point with a Fleischa pistol, 2 others guarding the blast door. "Give me juice," Dara said, voice thin beneath the respirator. She tugged a power conduit free of its housing. Orange spark snapped at her knuckles. The line pulsed, steady, exactly what she needed to feed the wounded data core. Cade unlatched the panel on his prosthetic. Amber light flickered from the cracked wafer. Dara snaked the borrowed cable into its micro port. The pulse steadied, shifted from amber to green. "Oh, that's a heartbeat," she breathed. "We hold this room. I can pull a full broadcast package." The words had barely left her mouth when a dull thunk rolled through the deck. Metal on metal, too deliberate for loose scraps. Cade signaled silence, pressing his back to the console. Above them, the grated catwalk creaked. "Up," he mouthed to Scar. Scar tilted the Fleischa pistol skyward and squeezed. A spray of micro spikes punched through the grate, clanging off armor just out of sight. Two shapes fell, the Lethe scouts dropping like hawks, talons extended. One landed atop the hologram table, scattering shards of light. The other crashed into a computer stack that exploded in a burst of static snow. Cade rose, firing. Rail slugs slammed into the first scout's chest, dense spider webbing across obsidian plates. The alien staggered. Scar finished it with a second burst that left feathers and armor fragments raining across the pit. The second scout sprang from the wreckage, blade flashing. A teenage deserter named Londo, barely 17 and clutching a pipe shotgun, froze in its path. Cade shouted, but the moment stretched thin, too thin. Blade met flesh. Londo folded, blood sheeted across the deck like red lacquer. Cade's gun drifted, rage dragging it higher. 2 rounds, then a third. The scout toppled backward into an equipment rack. A remote block charge clattered from its grip, lodged against the deck. Its status light blinked amber, then red. Down! Cade dove over Dara, arms shielding her as the charge detonated. Sound vanished beneath the blast wave. When hearing seeped back in, it brought the metallic ring of tinnitus and the wet coughs of wounded recruits. The hologram table lay in twisted knots, the drone control interface dead. Smoke crawled across the floor, thick as a liquid night. Dara's hands still clutched the cable, her dark eyes wide but focused. Core's intact, she croaked, but the control pit is toast. Turrets are gone. Cade forced himself upright. Londo's remained slumped against the splintering railing, vacant eyes staring at nothing. Around the boy's neck hung a faded cloth tag, draft orders he'd never answered. Ghosts again, piling on Cade's shoulders. He swallowed grief, tasted iron. "We keep moving," he said, voice rough. They gathered what ammo survived the blast and pushed into the service corridor beyond. The contraband vault glimmered like a dragon's hide. Crates of smuggled stimulants, counterfeit ration chips, and black market cybernetic kits formed uneven aisles under ultraviolet strips. In the center stood Warden Silas Imako, sidearm shaking in both hands, spectacles half fogged by sweat. A portable generator hummed at his feet. 4 suitcases-sized power cores lashed together, cables snaking into the ceiling. The luminous blue of ionized coolant cast hunger-bright shadows across his pallid face. Cade stepped through the blast door first, weapons lowered but eyes flinty. "Relax, Silas. If I'd come here to kill you, we'd be talking after." Imako's finger twitched on the trigger. "Stay back. These cores are my insurance. You want 'em, you bargain." "You mean the same way you bargained inmates for kickbacks?" Fletch asked, sliding in behind Cade. "Your leverage is garbage." Dara went straight to the generator, opening her tool pouch. "We need 1 core. 2 would be divine." Imako barked a laugh edged in panic. "Take them and the gas fails in C block. You drown in riot." Cade reached out, pushing the warden's gun barrel aside with his prosthetic palm. "Silas, listen. An alien kill team is butchering your staff. Your contraband network is dust. Help us, and there's a seat on the shuttle." Hope flashed, then flickered. Imako's gaze fell to Cade's ruined forearm panel, lingering on the glowing heart of the data core. Recognition. A man who knew dirty secrets when he saw them. "You can't possibly win this," the warden whispered. "Winning's overrated." Cade replied, "Surviving with purpose, that I'll take." Imako's weapon lowered. He stepped aside, hands trembling. Dar detached 2 cores, hefting them with a grunt. They were heavier than they looked, dense with captured energy. Cade laid a hand on the warden's shoulder. "Seal yourself in the monitoring loft. When lockdown lifts, follow the lights to the launch deck. No guards left to stop you." Imako nodded, a man already halfway to penance. As he scurried through the side passage, Fletch exhaled a sharp chuckle. Mercy, Captain, that's new. Spending bullets on beggars wastes time. Cade muttered, lifting one of the cores. Let's roll. Medgel packets littered the infirmary like burst sea creatures, their iridescent slime drying into tacky puddles. Autodocs hung open, mechanical arms twitching as if haunted. The air tasted of antiseptic and copper. Tall stalked the central aisle, clawed boots clicking on tile. His lieutenant, Eric, advanced beside him, motioning scouts toward doors flanking the ward. A faint hiss, almost playful, drifted from overhead vents. The smell shifted, sweet, cloying, deceptive. "Commander," Eric said, mandibles scraping the syllables. "Air composition altered." Tal extended a sensor wand. The reading glowed amber, concentrated sedatives. He cursed softly. "Cade plays healer," he said, voice low. "He thinks to slow our limbs." Eric snarled, "We seal helmets." But before visors aligned, a line of autodoc syringes snapped from hidden launchers, the needles filled with the same narcotic mist. One embedded in Eric's throat joint. Blue blood trickled before his vocal cords found words. Tal ripped the dart free, but the damage was done. Eric's pupils dilated, muscles slackening. He swayed, armor suddenly too heavy. Tal grabbed his lieutenant's shoulders. "Stand," he ordered. "Clan eyes watch us." Eric's reply was a wet cough speckled with cyan. He tried to raise his rifle, dropped it. Knees hit tile. In another breath, he lay on his side, chest rising in ragged waves. Tal's anger burned cold. He signaled a scout. "Seal the vents. Full respirators. Push on." The scouts obeyed, but Tal lingered beside Eric, one hand splayed over the fallen officer's sternum plates. He felt the flutter of life ebbing, each pulse a note in a dirge only Tal could hear. "Forgive my failure," Tal whispered, mandibles brushing Eric's helm in farewell. He closed the lieutenant's eyes, then rose, spine straight. "Cade dies by my hand alone," he declared. The scouts responded with clipped affirmatives tinged in fear. Iron Halo's hull curved away into night, studded with mooring rings and frost-white antenna. The maintenance gantry jutted from the spine like a rib, its grated walkway rattling with every tremor from the convulsing station. Beyond the rails, stars burned indifferent. Pale particles of micrometeor dust struck the guard panels, a constant hiss, soft as snowfall. Cade clipped his suit tether to the safety line, the power core slung across his back like a giant's rucksack. Scar followed, then Dara, her visor fogging at the edges. Fletch guarded the rear with borrowed pulse rifles. Wind didn't exist here, yet Cade felt its phantom on its skin, the tug of vacuum and the deep gravity well of failure waiting below. Midway across, a shadow detached from the superstructure. Varric Tal, armored silhouette haloed by reflectionless plates, emerged atop the gantry railing. He landed without a whisper, exoframe boosting the leap. "Captain Cade," Tal called, voice amplified through external speakers, oddly calm against the cosmic hush. "You carry ghosts that belong to me." Cade braced, rail pistol rising. "Then come and claim them." Tal surged forward. The exoframe servos howled, propelling him in a lethal lunge. Cade sidestepped, firing 2 slugs that pinched off shoulder plates. Tal's gauntlet jackhammered into Cade's chest. Rib and prosthetic both groaned. The impact knocked him against the guard rail. Stars spun. Cade tasted blood inside the helmet as he ducked another swing, clipped Tal's knee joint with a snap kick. The alien staggered. Scar saw opening, raised flèche pistol. Tal backhanded him off the walkway. Tether snapped taut, yanking Scar into a pendulum swing above bottomless black. Dara shouted through comm, voice jittery with static. "Cade! Cable anchor behind you!" At the walkway's edge, a counterweight spool fed into a communication tower stabilizer cable, thick, braided, stretching out into space where the relay dish perched on a spar. An idea struck like lightning. Cade lured Tal closer, retreating toward the anchor. Tal advanced, blows slamming off guardrails, sparks fanning out into starlight. Fletch threw a socket wrench. It pinged harmlessly off Tal's helm, but it drew a flicker of attention, the fraction Cade needed. He dove, rolled past the anchor, and slammed his prosthetic fist onto the quick-release lever. Warning lights flared orange. The cable snapped free with a metallic roar, unfurling into the void. Recoil jerked the stabilizer spool sideways, yanking Tal's exoframe by the waist harness he'd unknowingly hooked on a protruding bracket during the scuffle. A heartbeat of silence. Then Tal was airborne, flung out along the whipping cable like a stone from a sling. He vanished into the darkness, a dwindling flare of suit lights tumbling end over end toward the broken horizon of Iron Halo. Cade's victory lasted half a breath. The wrenching motion had torn more than cable. His prosthetic forearm, cracked from earlier damage, snapped at the elbow. The limb spun away, still tethered to the power core, and more critical, the data core humming inside. "No!" He lunged, fingers closing on empty space. The arm drifted beyond reach, caught in a gentle tumble alongside the severed cable. Moments later, both vanished behind the curve of the station, lost to the void. Dara pulled Cade back before his tether overextended, her small frame anchored by pure will. Fletch helped haul them to safety. The gantry shuddered, metal shrieking under stresses it was never built to endure. Cade stared into the gulf where his proof had disappeared. The thrum of Iron Halo's wounded heart echoed through the soles of his boots. Grief wanted to pull him under. "There's still a fragment in the arm's buffer," Dara reminded him softly, as if reading his spiraling thoughts. "Enough to light a spark if we feed it." Cade's breath steamed the visor. He nodded once. "Then we burn the galaxy with that spark." They turned toward the launch deck access ladder, station trembling beneath them. Somewhere behind, Scar's tether retracted, hauling the shaken inmate back onto the gantry. One by one, the battered survivors disappeared into the access hatch, leaving only meteor dust and cable strands twisting in the starlight. Fuel mist rolled across the launch bay in ribbons, every breath tasting of chilled propellant and scorched metal. Emergency strobes fought the haze, turning the cavernous space into a stop-motion inferno. Smashed tug drones wedged against walls, gutted cargo crates spewing rations across a floor slick with hydraulic fluid. A half-assembled escort shuttle squatted at the far end, engines yawning open like wounded lungs. Dara crouched beneath its port thruster, solder wand blazing violet arcs as she patched the data buffer from Cade's lost arm into the beacon array. Fletch straddled the cockpit ladder, pulse rifle across his lap, gaze jumping from doorway to ceiling like a man tracking ghost footsteps. Cade limped in first, chest plate fractured, stump sparking above the elbow. He nearly skidded on the slick floor before steadying himself with his one good hand. "Status?" he rasped. Dara yanked her face shield aside, sweat shining on suit-streaked cheeks. Flight computers alive, beacons fused straight to the sublight comm. She jerked a thumb toward a cracked monitor where a jagged waveform pulsed. "It's raw, but it'll scream loud." Cade managed the ghost of a grin. "Good. Get her hot." Before Dara could reply, klaxon jumped on octave. Massive blast doors at the bay mouth groaned, hydraulics choking mid-cycle. A column of warning glyphs spidered across the overhead screens. Exterior shut down, manual lock engaged. Warden Imako's panicked voice crackled through a wall speaker. "Captain, you promised safe passage. You can't leave me." Cade bit back a curse. Imako must have triggered the internal lockdown, slamming the blast doors and jamming the track. Without those doors open, the shuttle would turn to fireworks against bulkhead. Fletch slapped his rifle against the ladder. "I volunteered to kick in the hinges, but I left my Titan armor in my other pants." Cade's eyes swept the bay. Overhead, an industrial crane, bright yellow, grease gleaming on its joints, hung from the rail system that ran the length of a launch corridor. Cade pointed with his chin. "Crane's hook's a battering ram. If we wedge it under the seam and drive the rail, we crack the doors." Fletch's grin cut wide. "Now you're cooking." He hustled for the crane controls perched on a maintenance catwalk. As he jogged, automatic turrets along the upper mezzanine whirled awake, Imako's last-ditch deterrent. Their barrels tracked him, servo motors whining. "Gun nests!" Dara shouted. Kay drove for a fallen cargo sled, rolled it upright to form cover, then fired 3 slugs at the nearest turret. 2 rounds skipped off armor, the third shattered its targeting lens. The turret jerked sideways, spraying sparks, then died. The second turret dropped a hail of rounds, chewing tracks through the deck toward Dara. She flinched behind a fuel drum, soldier wand still clutched in one hand. Cade looked up. Fletch had reached the catwalk, working the crane's joystick. The gantry rumbled, claws descending like some prehistoric predator seeking prey. Round stitched the catwalk railing. A slug punched Fletch's thigh. Crimson splattered the metal grating, but he never stopped moving. "Come on, sweetheart," Fletch muttered into the open comm, voice trembling but steady. He swung the crane, lowering the hook under the blast door seam. Metal shrieked as the claws gouged a foothold. Fletch shoved the throttle forward. The rail engine howled. The crane arm strained, hydraulic lines quivering. The blast doors groaned louder, bolts snapping like bones. The surviving turret zeroed on Fletch, muzzle cycling. Cade hurled a flash cartridge scavenged from his belt. White fire split the bay, overloading the turret's optics. It jerked and fired blind, rounds chewing ceiling plates instead of flesh. Not blind enough. One slug found Fletch's ribcage. He staggered, looked down at the widening stain, then yanked the throttle again. The crane motor red-lined. With a tortured wail, the blast doors peeled apart 6 feet, wide enough for a shuttle's nose if the pilot threaded the needle. Fletch sagged against the lever. "Doors are open, Captain," he gasped, blood bubbling at his lips. "Go earn that amnesty." His knees buckled, body folding over the console. Cade's rail pistol barked twice more, silencing the rogue turret. Then he sprinted up the ladder to haul Fletch away, but the catwalk shook, auto lockdown bolts sealing. Metal partitions dropped between segments, cutting Cade off. Fletch forced a wink, half smile still in place. "Always wanted a box seats at a fireworks show." A firewall shutter slammed behind him, sealing the catwalk section. Cade beat uselessly on the partition. Fletch lifted the throttle 1 last inch. The crane arm drove forward, bracing the blast doors permanently. Then the wounded con man sank to the floor, hand pressing to the bleeding hole, eyes fixed on the distant stars he'd never touch. Hydraulic alarms blared. Fuel hoses ruptured, spilling hazy vapor that crawled across the deck like fog over graveyard soil. Dara's hand wrapped around Cade's wrist. "We can't reach him." Cade's jaw clenched until teeth groaned. Finally, he nodded, letting the rage compress into something knife-sharp. They climbed into the shuttle, the hatch scraping shut behind. Pilot seat straps bit into Cade's shoulders as he gunned main thrusters. The shuttle lurched, skids leaving the deck with a squeal. Through the cracked canopy, he saw the blast doors part just enough for a daredevil's exit. "Hang on!" he barked. Dara dropped into the comms chair, slapping the power cores into the beacon array. A low cycling hum filled the cabin, rising into an angry keening. She flicked open broadcast channels: military emergency, civilian distress, pirate salvage frequencies, any ear that could hear. "Buffers loaded," she said, fingers dancing over the cracked keypad. "Packet includes coordinates, partial vid, genetic markers from the bioweapon fallout. Light her up." Cade angled the shuttle nose for the narrow gap. Alarms shrieked as proximity sensors screamed. Sparks skidded along the hull when the starboard winglet kissed steel. A vertical stabilizer sheared off, spiraling back into the bay. Clear. The shuttle shot from Iron Halo's wound into hard vacuum. Behind them, the prison asteroid spun, one side glowing molten where reactor shielding had degraded from the night's firefight. Dara slammed the transmit key. The shuttle trembled as raw data hammered into sublight comm bursts, staccato flashes invisible to the eye, yet bright as supernovas in radio space. "Signals live!" Dara shouted over the rising whine. "Power cores running hot!" Inside the Iron Halo, cascading failures built to a deadly chorus. Overload klaxons howled across every channel. Fusion regulators spiked. The prison's equatorial ring lit with chain fire explosions, the beast eating its own heart. Cade spared a glance through the rear camera. "Fletch, you magnificent bastard!" A final blossom of white-blue fire engulfed the launch bay, racing along corridors, splitting Iron Halo's hull along old mining seams. The asteroid's skin peeled, venting atmosphere like geysers lit by newborn dawn. Shrapnel clouds blossomed outward, flecking the shuttle's shields with sparkling hail. Shockwaves buffeted the craft. Cade fought the stick with one hand, knuckles bleached white, stump strapped tight against the seat frame. Hull strain warnings bleated. He silenced them with a growl. Dara's console sputtered but stayed green. "Beacon survived the burst," she said, voice trembling somewhere between sob and laugh. "Data fragments out there. Somebody's going to hear it." Cade drew a ragged breath, lungs burning. The faces of his dead, platoon brothers from Cinder 4, young Londo, Sly Fletch, crowded the dark behind his eyelids. For the first time in years, their weight felt lighter, as if darkness itself had exhaled. "Course?" Dara asked. Cade set the nav for the nearest trade relay, a refueling hub 2 days out, neutral ground where news spread faster than disease. He punched the burn sequence. Engines flared, painting wreckage in orange chase lights. "Toward whoever is still listening," he said, "and if nobody is, we make them." The shuttle arrowed away, Iron Halo shrinking to a cracked ember amid the endless black. Somewhere in that darkness, fragments of truth now rushed along radio tides, evidence that could wrench empires off their hinges. Cade leaned back, eyes on the stars ahead. "Ghosts," he murmured. "Your turn." Behind him, Dara quietly engaged the autopilot, then reached over, resting her bandaged hand atop his. No words needed. The hum of engines, the distant ping of outgoing data, those were enough. Together, they left the grave of Iron Halo behind, carrying a spark fierce enough to start a wildfire across the galaxy.